Good morning, 7 East. It is Thursday, people. Statistically the shortest day of the week, and that means it's going to be the shortest episode of the week on Free LEPRE Radio episode 023. Agenda today, we're going to talk about President Jackson's second term. Then we're going to talk about how is Andrew Jackson remembered. It's a pretty hotly debated issue. And then finally, our presidential election time machine. Not nearly as exciting as I made it sound with 4 exclamation points, but you'll see. So, picking up where we left off yesterday, we finished Jackson's first term, and now we're starting Jackson's second term. And any second term only exists because there is an election. And in the election of 1832, Andrew Jackson wins decisively. There really is no opposition that can mount a big campaign against him. You see there's 3 other candidates, but Jackson runs away with it. He is a popular president, and his re-election in 1832 shows that. Next. So problems facing President Jackson in his second term. Well, the charter for the Second Bank of the United States was going to expire in 1836. Supporters of the bank, like Henry Clay, wanted it renewed, but Jackson was against it, and we're going to see why. So back then, the bank was only given like a contract of like 20 years, and they wanted to renew it before the contract was up. Jackson was against it, and that was going to have to be decided before 1836 when it expired. Second major thing, there's anger in the southern states over tariffs, and if we don't know, a tariff is a tax on a product being shipped to America from other countries, and this led to talk of secession. Secession is the act of a state declaring independence and leaving the United States. So these are the 2 main problems that Jackson had to deal with in his second term. The whole issue with the bank is called the Bank War. So just before the end of his first term, Jackson vetoed a bill that was written to renew the Second Bank of the United States. After his re-election, he set out to destroy the Second Bank of the United States. Not literally, but figuratively. He didn't actually want to demolish the building, although if he could, he probably would have. Jackson thought the bank did nothing to serve regular people and only serve the interests of the rich and powerful. Remember, he's known as the common people's president. He's very suspicious of banks and the wealthy and powerful, so it's no surprise that he wants the second bank closed. He even considers the very creation of a national bank to be unconstitutional, since it's not mentioned in the Constitution. After back-and-forth political fighting, Jackson tried to weaken the bank before its charter expired, causing the bank to close in 1836. Jackson had won, but he made many more enemies in the process, and he made the enemies he already had hate him even more. And on the right side, you could see a political cartoon showing Jackson wielding this like a sword that says veto on it, and he's slashing at the Second Bank of the United States, which is symbolized by this snake hydra creature with all these heads. The people who support the bank are the heads, and he's slashing at them. That is the Bank War. Jackson wins that one, but a lot of people are angry over it. Now, the nullification crisis, somewhat related but not totally. Tariffs had long been hated, especially in the southern states, but this anger reached a new level in Jackson's second term. Southern states, like South Carolina especially, was upset that these tariffs were costing them money by raising the prices of goods being shipped in from Europe. They disliked the tariffs so much that they claimed to be able to nullify the law, which means they would believe they could cancel or ignore it, going against President Jackson and the federal government. In 1832, Jackson signed a law that reduced the amount of money the tariff cost, but this still didn't make South Carolina happy. They just did not want to follow the federal law. They felt that if their rights and power as a state were being infringed upon, they had a right to say no. Nullification crisis part 2. In 1833, South Carolina declared that it had nullified the law and that they were not going to follow it or collect the money demanded by the tariff. So they're openly saying, we are not going to follow the law. South Carolina followed this up by stating that if the federal government tried to enforce the law in South Carolina against their wishes, then South Carolina would secede from the country. Meaning they would declare their independence and leave the United States altogether. Jackson responded forcefully, saying that nullification and secession were unconstitutional and acts of treason, meaning you were a traitor if you tried to leave the country over this. And he claimed that he would hang the people responsible, including his own vice president, John C. Calhoun, who was from South Carolina and supported what they were doing this whole time. And as you can imagine, threatening to execute a bunch of people, including your own vice president, seen as kind of bold, and that's part of the reason why Jackson is kind of seen as like a dictator or king, like this cartoon shows. Nullification crisis part 3. In the end, the threats of Jackson to send the military to South Carolina succeeded in getting South Carolina to back down. So South Carolina, all bark, no bite. They don't choose to leave the country. They're just threatening and then when Jackson threatens them, they back down. This crisis showed that there were a lot of conflicts between sections of the United States, mainly North and South, that were starting to get more serious. These conflicts would boil over in 1861 as many states will choose to secede over disagreements over slavery, and this will cause the American Civil War, but more on that in Unit 8. Lastly, let's talk about how Andrew Jackson is remembered. Well, Andrew Jackson is probably one of the most controversial presidents in American history. He is loved by some, absolutely hated by others. Jackson's treatment of Native Americans has been seen as a huge stain on his legacy with the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act. Also, in addition to this, he became a slave owner later in life after he grew up with such a low background himself. So it's kind of seen as a betrayal of his lower class roots that he would go and actually own slaves. On the other hand, on the more positive side, what people look at, they believe Jackson invented the modern presidency by setting the example of the president as a public figure and celebrity. Jackson was seen as making America more about focusing on the needs of common people and making America more democratic despite his own authoritarian personality. But his impact can still be felt today because the Democratic Party that exists today was an invention of Andrew Jackson. He started it. And he also invented political campaigning as we know it today that we see on TV where the candidates go from town to town, state to state, giving speeches. Jackson was the first to do that. So in many ways, he made the modern presidency as we know it today. On the right side of the screen, we actually have a photograph of Jackson when he's much older. Still kind of looks like the guy on the $20 bill, which he is. So if you ever use a $20 bill, you ever wonder who that president is, that is Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. There's a lot of debate considering whether or not he should be taken off the $20 bill. There's a lot of articles written about it. Some people think that because of what he did to Native Americans, he really shouldn't be on money. I don't know. It depends on your opinion. But he's been on the $20 bill, and that kind of just shows how much of an impactful president he's been. Now, the third item on our agenda, the presidential election time machine. Tomorrow on Classroom, you're going to be able to vote for who you think the greatest of our first 7 presidents was. I'm going to post a Google form that's like your ballot. It is an election year for president here in 2020, but I also want to do like a fake presidential election. I want to see who we pick as the greatest or best president of these first 7. So there's going to be a poll for our class. We're going to elect, in quotes, one of our first 7 presidents to represent who we think did the greatest job as president. So hopefully after looking through these videos and doing all the assignments, you have a good idea of who you think did the best job as president. Not who you like the best, not who you think was the coolest, but who do you think did the best job at being president? Vote for that person, and then I'm interested to see what the class is going to say when all the votes are counted. That is it for this shortened edition of Free LEPRE Radio. Have a good Thursday, and I will see you Friday.